There are a lot of different options out there for real estate agents when it comes to artificial intelligence.
In today's episode, we're going to cover 6 comparisons between ChatGPT and Google Bard.
And stick around to the end, because at the end, both Rajiv and I are going to give you our opinion about which one would be perfect in your business.
So, Jimmy, I'm excited about this episode because ChatGPT rightfully so got all the love in 2023, and to the point where Sam Altman won Time Magazine's Person of the Year. And he may be the first CEO that actually got fired and rehired for the Person of the Year. But that aside, there are some worthy competitors for ChatGPT. And the first one that comes to mind is Google Bard. So today we're going to dig into 6 features, comparisons, some are differences, so that you can make an educated decision on which AI tool is right for you. And stay tuned till the end. So we're going to get to that. So I'm going to start with the first one, Jimmy, which is text generation. So most of the prompting that has happened with AI tools is about human language. Just type in what you're looking for and they give you a response. ChatGPT and Google Bard both do a real good job with this. I would probably give the slight edge to Google Bard on the free ChatGPT version versus Google Bard, because Google Bard comes back with 3 drafts. So it gives you the 3 ways of looking at the same content, but both do a pretty good job of explaining the topic and giving you the length of content that you need. So text generation is a slight nod in my mind to Google Bard.
Yeah, I would agree. And listen, I mean, just in review of those things, you can't ever sleep on anything that Google does. You know, they're the 500-pound gorilla, so to speak. They literally control everything. And with the hash that they have available and the technology and the way that they do research, obviously that's why we're talking about it today. So I'm going to slip right on into number 2, which is the knowledge cutoff. And when we're comparing that, when we're talking about knowledge cutoff, we're talking about what is the data set that each of these versions can utilize to be able to provide the responses to the prompts that you give it. So I'm going to start with ChatGPT GPT free version. We're going to talk a little bit in each of these, I guess, about each of the different versions. But on the free version, the cutoff is January of 2022 as far as the knowledge for that. Now, if you go to ChatGPT Plus or the paid version, the cutoff for that is April of 2023. We're talking about Google. Obviously, it is tapping into all of the information that it has through Google search. So it's pretty much up to speed as far as immediately. It's probably going to be the closest to new information, I guess you could say, when it comes to that. You want to add anything to that on that, Rajiv?
No, you're right. I mean, you can't sleep on Google, and it's almost like real-time responses. So I did this recently, and I said, what is your knowledge cutoff to ChatGPT free version? Like you mentioned the dates. I also asked Bard, what is your knowledge cutoff? And Bard said December 31. Like it's like almost like a month behind, literally, based on when you check it. And so it's near real time. So if you're doing something with market insights, asking for real estate trends for a certain month, and it's very recent, Bard will do a real good job versus a ChatGPT free, obviously. And that's, I think, what you're alluding to in the conversational responses as well.
Yeah, and I would say this too. I mean, speaking from an agent's perspective, if you're talking about upcoming activities in your area, you're asking it for things to do, in the summer or whatever. You want to make sure that you got the best and the most accurate information. Always, of course, with all of this, check it before you post it. Make sure that it makes sense. But obviously, when we're talking about knowledge cutoff, I think you got to give a little nod, obviously, there to Google Bard as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the things we talked about in our episode 2, Jimmy, which was 4 Ps and RISE, those are all very applicable as you move from AI system to the other. So they're very applicable in Bard as well. So if you've not listened to that episode, definitely catch that one when you get a chance. So the thing about ChatGPT and Bard, both are large language models, different AI systems. So they get trained differently. So the output may be a little different, but it's in line with what you're looking for there. And again, it's an untrained assistant. So I'm into conversation responses, which is the 3rd feature that we're going to talk about. But both are very similar in that element, but based on what you're trying to do with your work, if it's recent events, Bard gets the nod for conversation responses as well.
Yeah, and one of the things, I think you mentioned it this way, and obviously we're seeing a little tilt here. I think we're going to level this out here in just a minute. But basically, when you mentioned about, hey, listen, they're different types are trained differently, so you're going to get a little bit different responses. The way that I would explain that is listen, Rajiv was, grew up a little different than I, had an education from a different institution, maybe college-wise than I did, but we both are in the same space. And so if you ask Rajiv a question, Rajiv may give you a very similar answer to mine, but it's going to be through his filter. It's the same way with these. If you're thinking about this, you're going to get very educated responses. They just are going to come through a little bit different, probably, just based on what they've used to learn with. So let's go move on to the employee's context. When we're talking about this, what we're really talking about is, ChatGPT collects the information from your previous conversations. It does have the ability to look back at those prior interactions, especially when you're doing those things. And, we have talked about some of the ways that you can include this and really give it more information to utilize. But when we're talking about this, it has that ability to really go back and look at these previous conversations so that you can continue them. Google Bard does the exact same thing. I think if we're looking at this from a standpoint, especially when we get into the paid version and having the ability to use some plugins like the Bolt, for instance, when we're utilizing it on writing specifically, I'd probably have to give the nod personally to ChatGPT, especially the paid version when it comes to employing context to the previous conversations.
Yeah, definitely. Well said, Jimmy. So the fifth one is now we're moving a little bit now away from the text conversations to images and documents. So if you look at Bard versus the free version of ChatGPT, Bard allows you to upload an image to analyze the image. So if you have an image that you get in an email or you found it online, you can upload it and say, analyze this and write a social post. We've also talked about, I take a picture of a food item and have it write a recipe. It can do that. Bard does that. Now, ChatGPT free is only text to text. But once you move to the ChatGPT paid, it does upload images, documents, and then some. So that's a whole nother conversation. But if it's a free for free comparison, I think Bard gets a slight nod with images. Nobody plays with documents. It's just images. And then when you get to the paid version, obviously, Google doesn't have a paid. So it's apples to oranges at that point. ChatGPT gets the nod for the paid one.
Yeah, and I would agree. That's another one of these, if we're comparing free to free, obviously, but as we continue to see the plugins and the different things that we can utilize on the paid version, I think obviously it continues to get better and better on the ChatGPT side. Now, let's talk about the pricing, because we've been talking about free to free. Obviously, the free version for ChatGPT is comparable, as we said, with Google Bard being free. There is the paid version, $20 a month. You and I have said this time and time again. It's the best bargain that we've ever seen, ever, for anything on this paid version for ChatGPT. And that really leads us into, because, if we're comparing this, now based on these things, I would love to hear what yours are, what your opinion is on which of these makes the most sense for different types of people. And then I'd love to give my opinion as well.
Yeah, so as we get into our recommendation section now, right? So if you're just starting to dabble with AI and you're really not committed and using it daily, like really you and I do, and many people that are listening to this are starting to do, let's talk about that basics of AI. I think you can set up an account with ChatGPT, learn it, but Bard might come a little bit ahead of ChatGPT free if your only focus is to create content. Now, as you start to get more and say, you know what, I'd love to actually create documents, do more stuff with images, remember my writing style, so that productivity enhancements, then you start to look at ChatGPT Plus. And look, at the time of the recording of this episode, Google doesn't have a paid version. Who knows? 2024 is the year of discovery. And I'm sure all of them are going to reinvent themselves as we go forward. And that's what makes our podcast exciting every week. So I want to turn it back to you, Jimmy. What do you think about, how would you suggest this to the agents?
Yeah, I would echo that. I would say if you're someone that has no intention of ever going any deeper than just basically using it every so often, start with Google Bard, and it's probably going to have the nod in the free version. If you're somebody that just wants to start, but you anticipate that you may leverage up at some point in the future, I think start with the one that you're going to have the ability right now to be able to leverage up with and to get to the best version. So I'd start with ChatGPT, because if you're at a place where you think that you're going to utilize it more, and let me just say this, we're all going to use it more going in the future, in my opinion. I would start with ChatGPT, utilize it until you're at a place where you have a comfort level with it. Then go ahead and get that paid version and make sure that you're taking advantage of that. Listen, Rajiv and I are going to do our best. You're going to have episodes where we're going to talk about how to utilize that really that paid version in a way that takes it to the next level. Some of these times you're going to have some of these episodes that we're going to go through. We're going to have some basics. Then we're going to have some episodes where we're going to go to the next level a little bit and give you some of those higher end opportunities for you to utilize it in your business. And those are going to be the ones where I think ChatGPT 4 and that paid version, obviously for the high end users and the users are going to use a lot, it's going to make a lot more sense. Does that make sense to you, Rajiv?
Yeah, absolutely. And hope this helps.
Yeah, and listen, if you haven't had a chance yet, make sure you go out and you subscribe to the podcast. Rajiv and I are literally studying this every day. I know I've already had an hour's worth of training this morning when we first had our text this morning. And I know you've done even more than me, Rajiv. So we're going to do our best to filter through the best information so that you can apply this to your business and serve your clients at the highest level possible. So take care, everybody, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks for watching the video. I specifically chose the video below for you because it builds on the one you just watched. I hope it's helpful, and I'll talk to you soon.